in a way, our time is much smaller. You know, that we almost might not have the sense of scale that somebody would have had thousands of years ago, because we've limited it to these little increments, seconds and minutes that you can't break out of. So we've kind of made a jail of time for ourselves, and seeing these older objects, seeing this older history, is a way of getting out of that jail.
We know that at the Bluff Great House, they constructed a landscape of features that referenced things in the past. A landscape where you're traversing miles to talk about one particular idea or set of ideas.
And it's telling a narrative form of history on the ground. As far as we know, these folks didn't have writing, although I think they were coming close. The histories are oral, or the histories are monumented. And you know, we do this kind of thing too. We write history on the ground. But I think that it tells you something about concepts of time. That's not cyclic, it's narrative, it's linear. It's going from A to B to C to D. So while there's a lot of cyclic thinking, I'm sure, and you know, it's inspired by the astronomy and the passage of the years, and, you know, people coming and going, that kind of stuff. There's also a linear sense of history where B, you know, C came from B, came from A.
And that temporal aspect is starting to resonate with me a little bit more these days, because I do think that those things are constructed largely to represent passages through time. These features are they're Leviathan, and in spite of their size, because they're in this great sea, they're hard to see, they're hard to dial into, and when you do see them, you suddenly have this overwhelming sensation that you've experienced something that's much larger than yourself, both physically but also in terms of time.
Working in the Pleistocene, the idea of thinking about things on a geologic timescale, right? That's so inconceivable to a lot of people, or you don't necessarily think about people living here 13,000 years ago. It really kind of gets us to thinking about time itself and how we understand that. Question of, do people in the archaeological past, the past before us, did they conceive time differently? I don't think we have to qualify that with they may have. I think it's undeniable that people in the archaeological past definitely had a different conception of time. Personally, I find it really ironic that our idea of time today, the Gregorian calendar, and how we conceive everything around us is linear. To me, that's really ironic, because when you think about it, much of our daily lives and time still revolves around a cyclical pattern. Minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, repeating cycles at different scales until we get to years. And for some reason now, using a Gregorian calendar, we conceive time over the long period in a linear fashion. That is so weird when you think about it, right? No one else probably thought about time like that in the past, before the development of the Gregorian calendar.
You're almost wearing time. It's all over you, and it's not something that's broken down into pieces. It just goes infinitely in all directions. There is just place and things that happen in place, and it all happens at the same time. I think that you feel that when you find an artifact, or when you touch something that's old, or look at something that's old. You realize that there's not a now. Now goes in all directions forever. So there's not this sense of seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, decades, centuries, millennia. You know, that's a way of organizing time. And so somewhere back inside of ourselves is a memory of a landscape that first worked for humans. And we have these layers of memory, but if you trace them all back, you find that original landscape that made us human. I mean, you can send in groups of archaeologists and surveyors to try to figure it out, but your body already knew. You already knew why you stopped there. would it be the same? Would it be an archaeologically rich place if that cliff wasn't there? If, you know, there's so many factors. If there weren't shelters along it, if there wasn't this basin that you could farm in with these big open spaces, if there wasn't this ridge that looked down into, like, how many factors are coming together in this one place to make it perfect? You know, all landscapes are beautiful, and some are just driving you into the center of it and making you part of it, like this.
You say I will not change.